And welcome to what's now News24. If you thought that the sky was the limit here, you're wrong. News24 will be even better. Coming up tonight, the worst premier in the country tells her Labor MPs they'll have to sack her tomorrow to get rid of her as a panicking party sinks in scandals. And wait to see who the ABC is barracking for. Also tonight, shocking confirmation, speaking of the ABC, that it's not just out of control, but sick. ABC management defends broadcasting a rant calling for mining billionaire Gina Rinehart to be sodomised with a stick, saying, hey, that follows ABC standards. And Gina Rinehart is sure going to hit back hard. And so much more tonight, including China's new weapons, the latest jihadist attack, this time on gays, and Donald Trump reportedly giving up on beating Iran. But first, the law is an ass. It's a menace. That 18C restriction on our free speech has struck again. The federal court today dismissed Pauline Hanson's appeal against the judgment 2 years ago that she'd racially vilified Green Senate Deputy Leader Mehreen Faruqi by telling her to, excuse the language, piss off back to Pakistan. A judgment that at the time reduced the One Nation leader to tears when I said to her on air, you seemed knocked for six.
It has, Andrew. You know, I just feel that the country's changed so much in such a way that people can't say what they think anymore. The thought police are out there. Everyone's shut down to having an opinion. It's not the country that I grew up in.
But today, Mehreen Faruqi was crowing, calling this a victory for Muslims.
She did engage in racist and Islamophobic behaviour. She continues to engage in racist and Islamophobic behaviour. Today's win is for every single person out there who has been told to go back to where you came from. Hate speech is being normalized in this country right now. And I, for one, will not be a bystander. I will stand up to hate in the streets, in Parliament, and in courtrooms. This case today is our fight back against the far right. Today's victory is especially important at the time when the far right is rising and fueling more and more racism in this country as they point fingers at migrants and Muslims.
Now, on its own, telling an immigrant to go back to where they came from can indeed be racist. I didn't like it when I was told to go back to South Africa, particularly since I've never been there in my life. But anyway, should there be a law against saying that? Well, I think not. But yes, it can be racist, I know that. But was it racist in this context? The federal court today agreed again, yes, it was. And I think, are you crazy? Here's what happened. 4 years ago, within hours of the Queen dying, Mehreen Faruqi posted her condolences, but they were clearly insincere because she went on, I cannot mourn the leader of a racist empire built on stolen lives, land and wealth of colonised people. We are reminded of the urgency of a treaty with First Nations, justice and reparations for British colonies and becoming a republic. And look, I have to say, I can't believe I was alone in wondering yet again when I read that why Faruqi had chosen to come to a country she damns as racist and thinks is headed by racists, to a land that she claims is stolen, to a constitutional monarchy led by people she says are thieves and which should instead be a republic, and so on. It's not racist to ask these questions. I'd have asked them of my own parents had they decided the land they came to was evil and ugly and had to be changed top to bottom to suit them. Now, Hanson, of course, put this question more vigorously, tweeting about Faruqi, your attitude disgusts me. It's clear you're not happy, so pack your bags and piss off back to Pakistan. And for that, she now faces legal costs of hundreds of thousands of dollars. She is facing that because she is up against a ridiculous law that says you cannot offend, insult, humiliate and intimidate someone like this. So someone can use their hurt feelings as a weapon against you to shut you down. Even someone who's a loudmouth senator who sure offends me. This Faruqi, I mean, really. Further, the appeal court judges today ruled that the original judge was right all along to say that Hanson's tweet was a racist trope. Well, I don't get it. Now they said it was treating immigrants as a second-class Australians, less worthy of what Australia has to offer, and even claimed a tweet would be understood as an anti-Muslim message, even though Hanson never mentioned Islam. Got to think, seriously? Now, it's true that Hanson, in her court case, did herself no favours by denying the bleeding obvious. I mean, you know, denying her tweet had anything to do with Faruqi's national origin, denying that she knew Faruqi was Muslim. I mean, come on, it just made her look shifty. And while I think the judges still did go far too far, that said, the law they have to follow, that has to be the real problem here. And Hanson has issued today this response.
If the people in Australia are scared or forbidden to freely express themselves, then those values are eroded. I'm here to fight for all Australians, to ensure that such a dark day never comes.
Now, I think this law that was used against Hanson is particularly wrong now, of course, when indeed it's a very hot and justified debate about limiting immigration from places with values very different to ours. Some might say, you know, like Pakistan. I suspect a lot of people would agree. And may now turn this verdict from a blow against Hanson to a blow against those trying to shut her down. They will back One Nation even more. Well, we shall see, even if we dare not speak. Now, speaking of Pauline Hanson, we've just seen some stunning and dangerous hypocrisy from this Prime Minister in attacking her. I'll give you two examples. The first, you remember, of course, how outraged Anthony Albanese claimed to be when Hanson was given a plane by mining billionaire Gina Rinehart so she could campaign around the country in greater safety.
One Nation pretend that they stand for battlers whilst getting planes given to them by Australia's richest person, while receiving donations from some of the very wealthiest people.
Yet Anthony Albanese himself went a week ago to this Sydney mansion of the 25-year-old son of a Chinese billionaire and accused tax avoider, and received a donation variously reported as being between $100,000 and $1 million. Let me point out some crucial differences here too. Pauline Hanson was up front about that donation from Rinehart. She showed off this Australian donation to reporters like there was nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to hide. In contrast, the Prime Minister yesterday was absolutely not upfront about his Chinese donation or the fundraising dinner.
Did you attend a dinner at the home of Felix Lee in Point Piper?
Oh, look, I attend lots of functions.
What about this one?
I attend lots of functions in lots of places, including last night right here.
What about this dinner at Point Piper?
I attend lots of functions in lots of places.
Why do you want to answer that?
Another contrast. Hanson said, yes, this is exactly what I did receive from this Australian billionaire, a plane worth $1 million, she said. But Albanese, he refuses to say exactly what he got from this Chinese billionaire, property developer and gambler Philip Dongfang Li, or his young son Felix, who we're asked to believe has separate business interests from his father.
It's where the money's coming from, PM. Is this going to be looked into, whether there's a red flag here?
Well, we declare all of our donations in accordance with the rules.
And a final contrast. We know why Rinehart donated that plane to Hanson. It's obvious. Rinehart likes what Hanson says about scrapping net zero and encouraging investment.
To encourage investment, we simply have to cut tape, regulations and taxes.
But no one seems to know or confess what this Chinese billionaire and his son want from Albanese. Is it help with the regulators who've been on their back, perhaps? I mean, son Felix had a banking startup that he backed lose its licence, and his father had a huge brawl with the tax office, which accused him of repeatedly deceiving authorities to pour billions from China into Australian bank accounts and mansions, and putting billions through casinos, leading to reports of suspicions of money laundering. I should stress, of course, the father denies any wrongdoing, and Albanese claims he knew nothing about anything.
Lots of fundraising. This one, the concern is that his father is accused by the tax office of deceiving authorities about funneling huge sums of money from China to Australia. Is that a concern for you?
Well, I'm not aware of those issues.
Should you have been aware?
He wasn't there. He wasn't there.
So given all that, you have to wonder at the sheer hide of a Prime Minister who rants about Hanson openly getting a donation from Australia, who made her money through good, honest Australian earth, while secretly trousering a donation from a Chinese businessman who got his money Lord knows how. The second example. Albanese had another big go at Hanson this month about the company she keeps. About Hanson hobnobbing in London with convicted thug Tommy Robinson, the dodgy anti-migrant extremist.
Pauline Hanson has travelled overseas to engage in various activities with fringe people. I don't think that's appropriate.
Now, as you know, I criticise Hanson myself for meeting Robinson because I don't fight for size but for principles. No double standards here. Which is why I can say again the Prime Minister is a hypocrite. Albanese has himself engaged with fringe people, far-left anti-Zionist extremists such as podcaster Abby Chatfield, now under fire from Jewish groups for spreading hatred against Jews who believe in Israel's right to exist. And then there's Albanese engaging with another hard-left anti-Israel podcaster, Hannah Ferguson, seen here on the right, granting her an interview and chatting like friends. Chatting with a woman who has since written about the assassination of Christian activist and Trump supporter Charlie Kirk, asking, is violence sometimes necessary? Yes. Yes, she said. Well, that caused an outrage, leading Ferguson to defend it like this.
The only purpose of this line was to acknowledge the reality that throughout history, there have been times when an oppressed group has needed to engage in acts of resistance. The immediate follow-up to that line is that this act of political violence is not one of progress. It is not one to be condoned.
In fact, Ferguson didn't actually read out all of that next sentence she wrote in that article, which copped her a lot of flack. Yeah, she did indeed say yes. She didn't necessarily condone it, but then she did say there was indeed a real debate over whether the left could justify assassinating Charlie Kirk. She wrote, is this act of political violence an act of progress? No. Do I understand and respect many of the progressives who disagree with me? Yes. Yes, this Hannah Ferguson respects progressives, respects barbarians of the left who say the murder of a Christian activist is an act of progress. And now this bigot, platformed by the Prime Minister, how about poetic justice, is now turned against Albanese and says she'll run against him in his seat because he is supposedly too soft on Israel. This woman who herself calls the terrorism against Israel just armed resistance by an oppressed group, a movement for Palestinian liberation. I wonder where that's all going. Now, no criticism I can see in her writings for the Hamas terrorist group. So, Hanson consorts with Tommy Robinson, not good. Albanese consorts and helps create Hannah Ferguson, just as bad and worse for being so close to home. Pauline Hanson may have her faults. She does have her faults. But Anthony Albanese is the last man to point them out. But to our panel in the huge drama of Victoria, Australia's worst Premier, Victoria's Jacinta Allen, was told this morning by a delegation of 6 ministers from all factions to go. She had lost the support of most of her MPs, they told her, to which she replied, well, make me, I'm staying. So there will be a vote tomorrow, you'd expect, with the Deputy Ben Carroll of the Labor right turning from mouse to challenger. He's told Allen personally this morning he will stand against her, just 6 weeks after telling us very teary, moving stories of how he never would do such a thing, which the Liberals have already turned into an ad.
For years, Ben Carroll stood by Jacinta Allen.
I've got a young daughter at home, and I couldn't be more proud to make sure she grows up knowing that I supported Jacinta Allen.
When the cost of living kept rising, he stood by her. When crime got worse, he stood by her. Then, he looked her in the eye and gave her his word.
Are you going to ask her to step aside?
No.
Can you look her in the eye and say that?
I can look you in the eye and say that, Premier.
Today, he's trying to get rid of her. Labor. Divided, dishonest, distracted.
And this comes as a news poll today, showed the coalition now ahead of Labor. And One Nation, interesting, dropped way back to 19%, which is punishment for still being ghost party with no leader, no policies and just one declared candidate. After preferences, the coalition leads Labor by 52% to 48%, which I have to say is still a very narrow lead when Labor is so utterly hopeless, leaving the state with the worst unemployment, the highest debt and the most outrageous corruption scandal. In fact, here's a scary scenario for the coalition, which tomorrow plans to move a motion of no confidence in Jacinta Allen's government. What if some Labor MPs vote with the coalition to have that passed and thus force an early election? But for Labor, under a new leader and with One Nation with his pants around its ankles. Joining me are Michael Kroger, former president of the Victorian Liberals, and Steve Conroy, former Labor Senator and Cabinet Minister. Stephen Conroy, I have to congratulate you. You've got half your wish already. You have now whipped up that challenge to Jacinta Allen after weeks on the show of advocating for it. Now, will you get the rest of the deal? Will she be gone?
Well, it's obviously a very challenging time for anybody, and I've lived through a number of leadership challenges, and I've been on the winning and losing side. It's very difficult for the candidate who is told that they've lost the support of their caucus, their party room, and that really takes a little bit of time to adjust to. So I'm not privy to her thinking tonight. I think there's been a very strong signal sent by an overwhelming majority of the caucus that they'd like to see a change, and I hope that the Premier understands that it's time. I mean, I thought one of the best lines I saw today was Keir Starmer understood when he'd lost the room. It was time to move on, and I hope she takes the lead from Keir Starmer.
Well, Michael, you've got to say, if she doesn't, Labor really is in a hole. She'll put self above party because if it's a contest, then the members, the Labor members, have to be consulted too. They have to vote. They get 50% say. That would take 2 months with the state election only 4 months away. Do you reckon it'll come to that?
No, there's no chance for coming to that at all, Andrew. There's zero chance. Daniel Andrews will tell Jacinta Allen not to do that because it'll damage his legacy as well. So she's going to lose tomorrow, and so she should. What gobsmacks me is the fact that she's still contesting the leadership. I mean, Victoria is bankrupt, corrupt, and lawless. Crime's out of control. Debt is the highest ever. And we've got these shocking corruption allegations. She's got a 71% disapproval rating. There's a bombshell article in The Age tonight written by Nick Mackenzie saying she was alleging that she was warned about big bill corruption in 2023, which she's denied. But Mackenzie's been and Rooney been pretty spot on so far. It's gobsmacking, Andrew, that she is still resisting. Now, there are historical precedents, of course. Hawke was asked in 91 to stand down by 5 ministers. He ignored them. Snedden was asked to stand down in 74 by 6 bankbenchers. He ignored them. She's ignored 6 ministers and 2 factional chiefs today, and she's soldiering on. But it's inconceivable she'll win tomorrow. I mean, I've said to you last week, when you drive the bus towards the cliff and you put your foot on the accelerator, which she's done, Labor will take you out of the driver's seat. For her to win tomorrow would be a catastrophe for Labor, great for the Liberal Party, bad for Labor and a disaster for Victoria. So she's the worst Premier I've ever seen, and I've been watching politics for 50 years. And Jess Wilson's one of the best things I've seen for a long time. She'd be a great Premier. And, God, does Victoria need a change of government, Andrew?
But, Stephen, I kind of like the look of Ben Carroll, fresh face, not the crazy left, but still, he was sitting there as Deputy Premier nodding along as Jacinta Allen did all this. Now, are we supposed to believe that if he replaces her, that this is a different Labor Party that doesn't have dirty hands from the corruption scandals, didn't sit there doing nothing while a reported $15 billion was stolen from taxpayers, that somehow this is a fresh start?
Well, I think Ben will be able to speak for himself tomorrow, but it's already been heavily speculated that he believes there should be a Royal Commission. There was debate in Cabinet today for the first time, pushing back on the position that there shouldn't be one.
First time.
So I think you'll see that there's a significant change coming if Ben is successful tomorrow. And I think you'll see he's already shown that he's tough when, as I think others have said, he stood up to Daniel Andrews when Andrews tried to install both the Premier and the Deputy Premier last time, and he stood up to Daniel Andrews. I think he's also very much been tougher on law and order issues than the government's position. You won't be aware of all the things.
Stephen, tough is not the word, tough is not the word normally associated with him. He's squibbed a few other chances to challenge her. You know that as well. I think you were tearing your hair out about 6 weeks ago that he didn't. He didn't do that. And he sat there while all this is going on. It's all very well to say right now, should have a Royal Commission after the damage is done, after the horse is bolted, and after while Labor now can rig the rules of the Royal Commission to make sure it doesn't dig too deep. But here, there's another thing before I run out of time, Michael. That poll I showed you, showing that the One Nation vote has suddenly dropped to 90%. It's still very healthy, but, we're talking about a party that some polls had in front of Labor and the coalition. Now it's a distant third. What are the lessons there for the coalition around the country?
Well, you don't like disagreeing with News poll, but that doesn't seem right to me. They don't seem to have gone from high 20s to 19 overnight. But what it tells you is this, that if you've got no leader, no policies and virtually no candidates, and you're 4 months before the state election, you need to get your running shoes on. I mean, it's passing strange that they'd still have 20%, Andrew, when you've got, nothing out there. So they need a leader quickly, they need policies quickly, if they're to be competitive and win seats. Good for the Liberal Party because that vote comes back to us. And what you don't want in Victoria is to have a result where Jess Wilson has a minority. I mean, she needs to win 16 seats and not lose any to win government in her own right, and that's desperately what we've desperately hoped for. But the lesson is you've got to have policies, and One Nation in Victoria don't seem to have any, and that's one of their problems.
Steve Conroy, do you believe that poll?
Look, I thought it was a little soft in the One Nation vote. I think Jess has done an excellent job since she's taken over. You've just seen how maturely she's managed the more redeeming debacle. She didn't, fly off. She was steady, composed, dealt with a very challenging situation. So I think she's begun to impress the electorate. I've always believed that. I've said that from the day she was elected. She was their best choice. And she's proved that so far. But the real test will come over the next 4 months. But she's made a very, very good start, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Labor caucus is as concerned as it has been. Our polling's been down in the mid-20s, and it's difficult to win an election when you've got a primary 25, 26, 27.
Yes, yet I don't think the gap is so big that Labor couldn't overtake the coalition again with a great campaign. I don't know, but I don't think it deserves to win, but I wouldn't rule it out. Michael Kroger, Stephen Conroy, thank you very much to you both. Now, remember, Pauline Hanson will be in the studio tomorrow night with Paul Murray answering your questions, a very special Ask Me Anything, which after this week, I think is an absolute must-watch. Ask Me Anything, Pauline Hanson, please explain. Do not miss it tomorrow night at 9 p.m. After the break, China's latest potential weapons, while America, meanwhile, stops bombing Iran because reports say it's run short of ammunition. Can that be true? There are a couple of Taiwanese high-tech experts over in Taiwan who get upset when I mention Chinese technological advances. They say, oh, it's all rubbish, it's AI stuff that you're falling for, or it's high-gloss paint over rust. But nevertheless, let me point out this. Chinese robotics companies, they keep unveiling new robots with, it seems, incredible new abilities, like this robot dog that's now made by Unitree, which just makes me imagine what it could do if converted by China's military into another one of its so-called combat wolves. Makes me wonder again, China's threat and where in this new kind of war are our Australian Defence Forces. Now, China's not used, by the way, a single missile or drone in the war in Ukraine and now the war in Iran. It's steadily building and building, while the US now, in Iran in particular, is firing so many munitions there that there are now reports that there's a shortage of air defences in particular. And this is why the US has not just paused attacks on Iran for the past 3 days, but also called off a full-scale assault on Iran. That pause alone is sure odd because it comes just after Trump last Thursday seemed about to launch that all-out war, telling Axios, I'm considering a massive attack, bigger than ever before. I'm close to making a decision. We're all set for it. Now, but Trump is now saying, oh, no, this story about us running out of munitions is all wrong. The US has more weapons than it needs. Joining me is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of The Australian. Greg, great to see you again. Is the US really running out of some munitions while China's increasing its own? Because if that's true, this is a very frightening place for the US to be and for the West as well.
Well, Andrew, great to be with you. The sad news is they are indeed running out of munitions. They're not running out in the sense that the closet is going to be bare, but the reserves are low and they're using them at a vastly faster rate than they can replace them. So they're not supplying Patriots to Ukraine, for example, and one of the reasons is because they say they can't spare any. They've taken military assets from Korea and elsewhere in Asia because they need them in the Middle East. Now, our stupid, wholly fatuous, ridiculous government years ago decided not to order missile defences until it had its air combat battle management plan all in place. And as a result, we didn't get on the queue. Well, we finally did order them some months ago, but we are so far at the end of such a long queue that, God knows when, if ever, we'll get them. But it is the case. Even the United States, great nation that it is, has not produced a war economy. You know, the Pentagon had all sorts of rules. It couldn't make multiple year orders and all this sort of thing. And not one country in the West outside of Israel has made the investment in military that it needs to, whereas China, Russia, North Korea and Iran, they built wartime economies. So we are, in an analogous situation to the Allies in about 1937.
It's so strange. In 1991, after the first Gulf War, America knocking over Iraq just like that, people thought the US would never be challenged in our lifetime. And now with asymmetrical warfare, it can't even knock over Iran after months. We are in a different paradigm now. Now, we've always said, Greg, that these big wars are linked, the one in Ukraine and the one in Iran, with the Iranians, the Russians and China all helping each other out. Now those wars have joined up because Ukraine has sent a drone all the way to the Caspian Sea to hit an Iranian ship, one sailor killed, Iran threatening revenge. They've done this because Iran's been sending drones to Russia and been getting Russian intelligence help in return to fight the US. What is going on with this particular attack and what do you expect the outcome to be?
Well, this is truly fascinating, Andrew. One other final point on Trump. When he said he was about to do a massive attack, I thought then that meant no massive attack was coming. We've talked about this before. Whenever Trump publicly talks about a big military action, it actually never happens. He thinks he's threatening and bargaining that way, but everybody can pick that now. Ukraine's action in knocking out an Iranian ship taking supplies to Russia, taking military supplies to Russia, is fascinating, has direct application to us, because one of the excuses the folks at Fort Fumble used to put for us not having a big investment in drones is that we are a maritime nation, and drones like they use in Ukraine are for land warfare between militaries that are close to each other. But Ukraine has shown that you can destroy a ship 2,000 kilometres away with clever drones. Now, why aren't we the absolute state of the art in clever drones that have maritime application 2,000 kilometres away from our shore? Well, there's no answer to that question. But the simple truth is we're not state of the art. We're nowhere in that whole equation. But this has changed the nature of war fundamentally. The combination of Iran, North Korea, Russia and China, that's why Iran is still in this fight. That's why Iran's missiles are now more accurate than they were at the start of this war. They're getting targeting information from Russia and probably from China. They're getting missile resupply from Russia and probably from China. This is a very nasty world with terrible enemies. And, you know, we have the ruling conference of our ruling party talks all about, I don't know, net zero and identity politics. You know, the last thing it talks about is this urgent national security situation.
And it stabs Israel in the back, of course, as well, for resisting what's going on and resisting the pressure, the attempt by Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. We passed little, the government issues press releases. Oh, they shouldn't do that. Doesn't do a thing to stop it, of course, and condemns Israel when it does.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the one-sided condemnation of Israel while withdrawing its demand that Hamas disarm is kind of pathetic. It's morally bankrupt and it's shameful. It is really shameful. But what strikes me about it is it's very much on a par with Andy Burnham, who made one foreign policy statement before he became Prime Minister, which was to say he was sorry that the Labor Party had been too weak in abusing Israel and hadn't been strong enough in supporting the Palestinians. And we're seeing the same now amongst the Democrats in the United States. I've got a big piece in the paper tomorrow talking about the Democratic Socialists of America. They are winning now all the Democratic primaries. Zoran Mamdani, all his candidates are winning primaries all over the United States. So the centre left is collapsing into a populist and extremist left, which is concerned with Gaza, demonising Israel, demonising America, identity politics. And of course, our local left-wingers are completely derivative of what happens in London and New York. And
absolutely,
this is a very big
don't forget demonising capitalism as well. I mean, just this is a massive tantrum from overgrown children against daddy. That's really what it is. Greg Sheridan, I can't wait to read that piece because that is a frightening development. Thank you for your time. After the break, the ABC's bosses defend their vile and pornographic abuse of Gina Reinhardt, which should make everyone wonder how sick is the national broadcaster. I cannot believe that the ABC's management has now endorsed this disgusting and pornographically violent abuse of minor Gina Reinhardt that I showed you last week, a pre-recorded segment from the ABC's Race Around the World.
'Cause when the revolution comes, will you hide under your bed? Or will you know exactly how to shove a stick right up Gina Reinhardt's butthole, stirring it round, mixing her guts up nice and smooth, making her into one big sausage roll to make something out of nothing?
Anyone remotely civilised should say that's disgusting. That shouldn't be on the ABC, funded by taxpayers. Instead, this is the official ABC response. The film was intended to be satirical in tone and considered to be editorially justifiable within the context of the program. That's an ABC ruling. That this dream of sodomising a prominent woman and turning her guts to paste is editorially justifiable. ABC standards. And I bet that's because Reinhardt is a conservative. The ABC says, no, this is because it's satire. Too stupid to realise there is actually a difference between satire and abuse. Joining me are Holly Hughes, former Liberal Senator, now with One Nation, and Lisa Goddard, former foreign correspondent and founder of Adoni Media. Lisa, the response of the ABC, what does that tell you?
Oh, Andrew, it's selective outrage of what we're seeing. Well, first of all, their decision is just disgusting. We spoke about this last week, as you said, and it is repugnant and as repulsive as it was back then, as it is tonight. But the editorial judgment, this is satire, that I think most Australians would look at and think, I don't know how our public broadcaster can come to that decision, because we all know this isn't just one person making that decision. This went through many, many layers of approval to get to this point. But let's flip over to Labor. Labor have been incredibly silent on this. You think back to the Ditch the Witch attack on Jacinta Allen, and you had the Prime Minister, you had Julia Gillard. They couldn't get out there fast enough and loud enough to bang that drum, and some would argue rightfully so. But on this, it's crickets. Where are they? At the time, Albanese said, no one in politics should be treated that way. He used all manner of adjectives. I haven't heard him on this one at all. That's a question that needs to be asked. And the other one, how much did we pay, or are we paying as taxpayers, for this race around the world that very few people are watching, but a lot of people are offended by, particularly Mrs. Reinhardt?
Well, I tell you what, I want to know where the Minister for Women, Katie Gallagher, is. I mean, has she quit her role or whatever? I mean, Holly Hughes, what do you make of this? I mean, it seems to me, just beyond question, that sort of thing should not be on TV. It is not satire. But for the ABC to put it to air with our money, it's just such an insult.
But it just shows the absolute lack of intellectual depth that we now see at the ABC. Remember Clark and Dorr and their satire, and how funny that was, and how...
That's satire.
See, that was satire. Remember, it was even the ABC that did Utopia, which, by the way, is a show I can't watch because it gives me PTSD, because it's how it actually works in departments. But that is satire, or at least supposed to be. That was witty and it was clever and everyone knew what it was. This is just vile. It is absolutely hateful. And, I mean, I am just perplexed at why this hate for Gina Reinhardt is allowed to continue. When I was in the Senate, I spoke a number of times, both acknowledging and congratulating Mrs. Reinhardt for her support of so many of our Olympic athletes, and the fact that, Swimming Australia now don't want athletes thanking Mrs. Reinhardt for the monetary gifts she provides them should they win medals. This is a great Australian who supports Australians, gets behind our athletes, gets behind Australian business, yet is constantly the subject of derision.
I know. I'm not compelling Australians to like Gina Reinhardt, right?
No, but it's like a Trump derangement syndrome.
She's a friend of mine.
Reinhardt.
But this abuse, I wouldn't use it against any of the Greens, for heaven's sake. That's my standard. I wouldn't even dream of using it.
To court. Maybe there's some courts that might be interested in it. But I mean, if that is not
speaking
more
of exactly
offensive.
Well, I got to ask, speaking of that exactly thing, here we have Hanson facing hundreds of thousands of dollars of court costs. Lisa for saying, piss off where you come from. The ABC says something far worse about Gina Reinhardt. Well, that's okay. That's ABC standards. But about that court decision, what do you make of that? Because I thought... a law against saying that, I mean, wowee.
Yeah. Look, and Andrew, you showed the pictures earlier tonight of Pauline Hanson's reaction when she got the first decision from the court and how she broke down. So you can only imagine the state that she's in tonight. So I think James Ashby said they've got 6 months before they can hopefully take this to the High Court. But he said just earlier on Credlin's program, they're looking at a legal bill of around $2 million. Now, as you say, how do I feel about this? I think that's a question you could ask most Australians, because at this point, all this is going to do is put more people in behind Pauline Hanson, because they'll be so terrified. They don't have $2 million in their back pocket to try to fight this, to protect themselves. And yet if they speak up or they say what they think or they say something that's going to offend or distress somebody, then they could very well find themselves in this exact position. So I just think Mehreen Faruqi has pushed this and pushed this and pushed this. What she has done, I think, is just build a stronger base for One Nation and for Pauline Hanson, and I don't think she'll give up this fight, nor should she.
Holly, I've only got half a minute, but I need to ask you about this judgment.
Oh, it's appalling, absolutely appalling. Offence is taken, not given. And the fact that it is written into our laws, no one took Mehreen Faruqi to court when she stood next to a sign that said, "Keep the world clean" with Israeli flag in the bin. The offence that she must have caused to Jewish Australians when she has purportedly said all of these genocide and apartheid comments with regards to Israel, yet no one's taken her to court. It only seems to be the left who are the offence brigade and then absolutely weaponise it through the legal system. I think it's disgraceful. I remember communicating with Pauline that night that you spoke to her, and I look forward to standing with her. And thanks, Mehreen. Really appreciate the extra members we're going to get joining One Nation.
Well, I hope it works out that way, because I hate these restrictions on free speech and the disparity between the ABC saying what it said about Gina Reinhart. That's perfectly fine. And the more innocuous comment by Pauline Hanson, that's $2 million in court costs. It's just, it's ludicrous. If people think it's all rigged, they've got it. Holly Hughes, Lisa Goddard, thank you so much for your time. After the break, in London, gay activists protest for Palestine. In Berlin, meanwhile, at the very same day, a pro-Palestine extremist runs gays down in another terror attack. How blind is the gay movement? Look, it's been a joke in the past, right? You know, the queers for Palestine activists. Leftists so blind to the reality of Gaza, a territory run by homophobic, gay-murdering Hamas terrorists, the kind of people that throw gays off buildings. But last weekend, the joke got really sick. London held its annual Gay Pride March, which featured the usual Israel haters like this.
Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Now, Berlin on that very same day, Saturday, also held a Gay Pride March. But this one was attacked by someone else protesting for Palestine. The 21-year-old German-born son of Lebanese immigrants, an Islamic State supporter, it seems, who ran his van into the crowd, killing at least one person, and then getting out to stab some more. That killer was later shot dead when he rushed at police with a knife. But the ABC, being the ABC, of course, to commentate on this on AM this morning, it went to an Iranian-born leftist activist and journalist in Berlin who worried not about Muslim extremists, but people who'd worry about some immigrant groups.
What I also find really touching and moving is that the queer community, while mourning and while being in shock, they feel the urge to give statements that they don't want this brutal alleged Islamist attack to be used to spread hatred against different minority groups.
Joining me from London is our Monday regular Talk TV host, Samara Gill. Samara, great to see you. Look, people talk about the suicidal empathy that some critics of the left, that some in the left have. Suicidal empathy. That is it, I think, you know, embracing the kind of extremists who could kill them.
Absolutely, Andrew. I mean, why do we put up with this? This is the same tolerant left that we have been warning time and time again that this would happen. You know, every weekend we see these marchers. They stick up for the same people that would gleefully ram a car into them with murderous intent. You know, this element of radical Islam, it's really wrapped its cold fingers around the neck of the West. And I do feel, especially this weekend, like it has been strangling the last breath out of us. You know, they come for things like Christmas markets that represent Christianity, pride marches which represent freedom, children's dance halls. Axel Rudakabana, the Southport murderer, was found with an Al-Qaeda training manual, beach parties like Hanukkah by the Sea, where, of course, those Jewish people were shot like fish in a barrel. You know, festivals like the Nova Festival, which was, of course, October the 7th. Palestine is run by a far-right extremist conservative government. I do not understand why people like the pro-Palestine, the Queers for Palestine crowd won't focus on acts like Ahmed Abu, who was a gay Palestinian who was beheaded in the West Bank in 2022 after he tried to flee to Israel where he could have sexual freedoms. You know, this is the intolerant left. And unfortunately, you're right, it's come to bite them, unfortunately, what they keep supporting weekend after weekend. And people like you have been telling them for many years that these are not the people who are acting in your best interest.
Look, it's interesting. I heard some refreshing straight talking on Friday, not just from you, of course, but from a British judge who I thought really put this whole debate about immigration and values brilliantly, you know, contra the federal court. It's not about racism. Now, the judge I'm talking about is actually the daughter of Indian immigrants. She's a Christian, and here she is sentencing a British-born Pakistani man to life in jail for plotting with another Muslim man to attack British military facilities, as well as Jews, in his jihad against Britain. Have a listen.
You are Manchester born and bred. You have not revealed what caused you to turn on the society that you had grown up in, gone to school and college in, worked in, and where your family was able to practice your religion in freedom and peace. You told the probation officer who prepared a pre-sentence report that the violence in Palestine angered and upset you and led to you admiring and sharing the rhetoric that hate preachers like al-Awlaki use to poison minds. By August last year, you were close friends with a man who would soon go on to carry out an appalling terrorist attack targeting the Jewish community in your home city. Your interactions caught on video in the mosque on the 9th of August show two equally engaged and enthusiastic men planning an atrocity against a British military facility for religious and political reasons. Your example must stand as a warning to men who are attracted by this form of militant, violent and destructive Islam for religious or political reasons. Character is contagious. In the Jewish book of Proverbs 13 verse 20, this is expressed bluntly. He that walks with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed.
Samara quoting the Jewish book of Proverbs, also in the Christian Bible, a masterstroke.
Absolutely. Extremists, they like to claim that they represent faith, but that brilliant judge reminded the court that they embrace hatred, violence, and murder, and those are condemned. Those are the sort of very moral traditions that they claim to defend, and I really, really appreciated what that judge said, Andrew.
Well, it shows that the doors are also open to people who share our values, and we have no problems with them. That is the real issue. Samara Gill, thank you so much for your time. That's it from me. Coming up next on News 24 is Sherry Markson. From me, good night.